morning. Um, it's morning here in South Dakota. So my name is Amber Laffey, and I live on the prairie of South Dakota, and I'm here to present my sociological and cultural presentation. And my title for this is called Confident Clergy Women. So before I begin with my research, I wanted you to know, and it's important to know who I am and why I'm so passionate about creating confident clergy women. First of all, I am a clergywoman. You can see me in action here in some of these photos. I'm a deacon in the United Methodist Church, and deacons are typically appointed to work outside of the church, but in this season of my life, God has called me to serve a little rural congregation that averages about 30 to 50 people on a Sunday. Before I became a clergy person, I was hired on our Dakota's conference staff to help oversee a thriving in ministry grant from the Lilly Foundation. And I still serve on that advisory council for clergy well-being project that we still have. It was then that my passion for clergy well-being really came into fruition. So while I was doing that work, and then entering into seminary and answering my call to ordain ministry, I realized that women have unique challenges and face constant criticism for being a woman in professional ministry. The realization continued, and it still continues in my life as I have been part of the Clergy Covenant group currently and for the past several years. The challenges that I face and the challenges that my sisters in ministry have to deal with constantly fuel me in this work to find a way to encourage and equip clergy women. Another important part of my story is that I was born and raised in the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America, otherwise known as the ELCA. There is third grade Amber in her one church outfit that she was allowed a year with my Bible, future Pastor Amber there. Um, I have always been spiritually led by women um, and informed by clergy women, formed spiritually by clergy women. In fact, I am here today because of a clergy woman who I got to experience thriving in her ministry and a congregation thriving because she was allowed to lead with her unique gifts and creativity she brought as a woman faithfully serving the Lord. It was from her that I learned that worship of God can be creative, fun, and deeply meaningful. She loved Jesus so much, it just poured out of her into her love for her people. And as a youth, I had another clergy woman at this congregation that you see right there in this picture, that she saw my unique gifts and invited me into leadership roles, not just in our congregation, but in our South Dakota Synod. You can imagine that was such deep history and connection with women clergy that it came quite as a shock to me that within a few minutes of me announcing to all the world on Facebook that I was going to be following the call God had put on my life to ordain ministry, my husband had a coworker email him scripture, Bible verses, and an explanation of why his wife should not and cannot be a pastor. To say that I was hurt would be an understatement. As I continued into my ministry, and these are some of my first congregations here, as I continued leading churches and doing work in our United Methodist Dakota's conference, I realized that the challenge is not only the general public or folks with a more conservative view, thinking that we should not be clergy persons. There are unique challenges with what congregation members also expect of us. The way we dress, the way we talk, the way we sing, or the way we raise our children, what our relationship status is. I could go on and on there. And so I have a few practical examples. Now, I also want you to know, I have personal pictures. These are all my sisters in ministry, and my mentor team encouraged me to include personal photos as well. So some of these stories that have impacted my work as well, these just very practical examples. One of my friends showed up to preside at a funeral and had someone say to her, You're the pastor? You're too pretty to be the pastor. Another friend left her denomination and joined the United Methodist Church because her past denomination said they affirmed women in ministry, but they didn't support it with their actions. She was never given the opportunity to lead a church, so she left. Or there's my friend who was an associate pastor at a big church for years and had a lot of experience preaching and teaching. But when a new senior pastor was appointed to her church who didn't believe women should be clergy, she was not allowed to preach, except for the 2 times he was gone a year. He let other men, less qualified or with absolutely zero experience or training, come and preach, but not her. And one last example I would like to give you is that one year at our annual gathering of all the United Methodists in North and South Dakota, our bishop who's there holding the staff, you can see her. Our bishop, who happens to be a woman, pulled her bangs back a few times while she was giving her Episcopal address. The next morning, while we were in an executive meeting, someone came in, interrupted our executive meeting as we were planning for the day, and gave her hair clips so she could pin her hair back. Now, would this same person have given their aid to a male bishop if he was touching his hair during a very important speech as the newly elected leader of our conference? I'm not so sure. And now I also want to take a moment to acknowledge, as Steve reminded us yesterday, that some of you have maybe never experienced a female pastor or as a spiritual leader inside or outside your church. And some of you may disagree with this completely, and that's okay. I'm not here to convince you on what you should believe, but the fact is that women have been leading people since the beginning of time. And I love this, not a radical, culturally palatable premise for women, nor a way for the church to keep up with the changing face of society. No, women living into their God-given influence is very old good news. It's as old as the Gospels, as old as the Old Testament figures, such as Deborah, and as old as the ancient garden called Eden. So the fact is that women are clergy and leading congregations, nonprofits, chaplain ministries, and our denominational leaders all over, and we have unique challenges. Alexis Abernathy, Chief Academic Officer at Fuller Theological Seminary in Pasadena, California, was quoted in this article by CNN. And she said the question used to be whether women should even be pastors, but that's not as critical a question anymore in some denominations. Now the question is, how can we make the environment in which women are pastors more fruitful, productive, and supportive? And this is exactly the goal for my project. The goal is to serve and encourage the women who say yes to this very hard and holy task of professional ministry. So, all of that being said, my overarching question for my project is what would happen if clergy women were confident, encouraged, and equipped in their call to ministry? And so, to do that, I will be creating a podcast called Confident Clergy Women. My goal is to create a weekly or bi-weekly podcast to equip and encourage clergy women so that they feel confident in their call to professional ministry. And in order to do that effectively, I wanted to create a survey for clergy women to fill out so I could see what their ministry and personal life was like right now, and then decide what they feel like they need more knowledge about or what helpful tools would be to feel more equipped in their ministry, and where they're needing encouragement and how they want to receive the encouragement. But first, I want to start to share with you some of the existing facts that I found in my research about clergy women. So in a study by the Census Bureau in 2022, there was 464,568 clergy persons. 19.3% were women and 80.7% were men. And then in her State of Clergy Women study, Eileen Campbell Reed shows the increase in clergy women since 1977 from 2.8% to 32%. And this last chart, you can see the comparison of clergy women in American denominations. And as I said in my survey for my own research, I created this 20 question survey for women who were ordained or licensed in their denomination. What I want you to know is that I did not include women who work in churches or do other paid ministry work, just to hone it in. I shared this survey with denominational leaders I knew in the United Church of Christ, the ELCA, Presbyterian Church USA. I shared it on my personal Facebook page and also clergy Facebook groups that I'm a part of. And so here are the questions that I asked that you can just see briefly, because I'll get into them deeper in my following slides, which you've already seen a preview of. So I want to mention here that when I created this survey, I was hoping for about 25 people to respond, and a crazy good amount would be 50, right? Well, God did more than I could ever ask or imagine because I had over 50 responses in an hour of putting this survey out into the world. I had a total of 296 responses in just a few days. And I think that just one was a duplicate as I went through it. So in a matter of, in a matter of, uh, sorry. So I think my biggest first finding is that clergy women want to and need to be heard. The second thing I learned right away is that I should have had probably more multiple choice answers instead of almost all open-ended questions because it created so much work for me to try to summarize and find the similarities in their answers. Um, but here's the thing about that, though. My mentor team pointed out to me that even though it was a lot of work, I am 100% ingrained in all of their answers. I spent so much time reading through every one of their hurts, of their joys, of all the things. Like I feel like I really know these women, and I know this material inside and out, despite my nerves right now. Um, so the first couple of questions I asked the women were about their context. So I know what is the background and current status of these women that out of nearly 300 women that answered this survey, 48% were United Methodists, which is no surprise because that's who I am. 29% were ELCA, 15% were UCC, 4% PCUSA, and 2% were others. And as far as their primary ministry role, they are serving in right now, 71% are serving local congregations, 8% are chaplains, 6% are retired, 5% are denominational staff, and 9% serve in other roles. And as far as their age, 30% were in their 40s, 26% in their 50s, 23% in their 60s, 15% in their 30s, and 4% in their 70s, and there was one in their 20s. And further questions I had about their context that could add pressure or more unique challenges as a woman in ministry were, do they live in a parsonage? 75% no, 25% yes. I wanted to know if they had children, whether they were adult, at home. So 33% have children at home, 46% have adult children, and 20% don't currently have children. Also, I wanted to know if their partner worked outside of the home. 78% said yes, 22% said no. And I asked if being a pastor was their second career, and that was about equal. 58% said yes, and 42% said no. And before I move on to my next slide, you will see that my experience and passion for and in clergy well-being, coupled with my training as a certified spiritual director, heavily influenced the questions I asked. And as a reminder, I had almost 300 open-ended questions answers to questions. So I did my very best to summarize them and categorize them into these main themes and simplified answers. So I want to start with one of the more light-hearted questions. I wanted to know right away, where are women currently and already finding encouragement and support for themselves? Surprisingly to me and overwhelmingly, the answer was clergy groups formed on social media. 122 of 296 women find encouragement in these groups. Several of them listed a young clergy female group that they're a part of. They find these groups as a place where they can be their true self, ask hard questions, and get help when they need it. The second highest answer was that these women find encouragement from their peers and mentors in their ministry. Third most popular was podcasts, which is good news for me, right? Number four was books, and number five was in-person groups that met, some related to ministry and some weren't. The next question I asked is, what do you do with a day off? Now, I don't know if you know this, but pastors are supposed to take a day off. And yes, they do work more than Sundays. Pastors are on call almost 24/7, as they are often called into life tragedies that happen all hours of the day. So taking this a day off is very important for clergy and their well-being. So what did they do with it? The highest answer on this was spending time with family and friends. And as you will see later, a lot of women feel almost this constant sense of guilt for not being able to balance their work and life outside of the church. The second highest answer was sleeping or resting. The third was exercise. Fourth, reading. Fifth, creative arts and hobbies like painting, poetry, knitting. And the sixth answer was spending time outdoors. The next question I asked was for the spiritual director in me. I'm passionate about wanting people to experience God in their own unique ways. And so the top way women are connecting with God is through prayer. The second, reading scripture. Third, these women enjoy a good devotional book or a book with a spiritual topic. Fourth, they enjoy journaling. Fifth, exercising. And sixth, spending time in community with other clergy women. Next, I asked them what their current feelings were about the ministry role they're in right now. Again, this is a question I wish I would have maybe created multiple choice answers because the answers were all over the place. So I ended up breaking it down into these three categories. I got the feeling that most of the women were super excited and loving what they're currently doing. They were exhausted and overwhelmed, or they just felt ambivalent or conflicted about their current role. There were a lot of answers that sounded like this. I really like my job, but. And what was really hopeful to me was that the majority of the women that answered said they loved it, which was the top answer of all these categories combined. This was so hopeful to me in this season that so many clergy people, men and women, are burned out and are leaving ministry. So let's dig in now into these challenges that women face. When I asked women, what is your biggest challenge as being a woman in ministry, the top answer was that clergy women do not feel that they are respected as leaders, and congregation members don't respect their authority as a clergy person. The second top answer was one of these patriarchal views, sexism. Women are still trying to prove that they can be clergy to many. And third, here's this theme again: women feel that congregation members place unrealistic expectations on them for what it looks like to be a mom and a pastor of a church. The fourth highest answer was that money is the challenge. Women are undercompensated and making less than their male counterparts. And I will show you the stats on that in a few minutes. And last, clergy women find it challenging that other clergy in their community will not connect with them or work with them for community events or let them be in a ministerial group with them because they are women. And so we know that we have challenges in ministry, but we also know women have unique opportunities in their role as pastor. So when I asked the women what they felt their greatest opportunities are, the top answer was we are more relational and we can relate to people in a different way than men. Second, we are more aware of our emotions, other people's emotions, and that is very important in ministry. Third, many women said these exact words: the sky is the limit for us. They are feeling hopeful and excited, like we are just getting started. Just watch what we can do. We are ready to make an impact, continue to make an impact, and we feel like the sky's the limit. We can do anything. Fourth, these women are passionate about empowering and inspiring other women and young girls to live into their potential and call that God has given them. Next, these women want to break the stereotypes that people have put on women in general. And the last most popular answer is that women bring a different and sometimes new perspective to preaching and teaching scripture that will connect better with some. So, next, I wanted to see if and how ministry has impacted their family, both the good and the bad ways. And if I had time, I would share with you several of my own personal stories, but I want to share with you um, this, what these ladies answered. And that is my family there at one of my churches too. So, ways ministry has affected their family. The women I surveyed said ministry has affected them most because the schedule they have creates a lack of quality time with the people that they love. Several noted that they are always on call and they miss holidays because they're at church. Number two, the stressful things that are happening at church affects their families. There is no leaving it all at work. The hard things are incredibly emotional and are so hard to just set aside and be with your family. The third top answer, which broke my big sensitive heart, was that some clergy women's children and or their spouse no longer attend church because of how their mom or wife was treated or how they were treated as pastors' kids or the spouse of the pastor in congregations they served. And fourth, probably especially because a lot of these women serve in the United Methodist Church, where we have an itinerant system, mentioned that all the moving is hard on their family. Another small but noteworthy statistic that I wanted to share with you all is that 6 women said their marriages ended in divorce because of the demands of ministry. So, with all that being said, there still is good. When I asked the women how ministry affected their family in a positive way, the top answer was that the church did provide their families with a type of a supportive community that they could belong to, especially when they were new in a town. They felt loved and cared for, especially in those unfamiliar places. And second, even though these women are extremely busy, professional ministry does give them a more flexible schedule than a typical 9 to 5 job. Third, their ministry has led to greater faith in God for their kids and their spouse. So we can kind of see opposite ends of the spectrum there. And fourth, being a pastor in a congregation has given members of their families opportunities to lead and serve in their community and in their church, which they wouldn't have had otherwise. So next, I wanted to know how clergy women thought they and other clergy women were treated differently than male clergy. The top answer by far was that clergy women are frequently asked to do stereotypical women duties at their church, like secretary work, cleaning up in the kitchen, working with children and youth, and doing cleaning things. And I personally attest to that one. Second, women feel like they have to work twice as hard to prove themselves as a capable ministry leader. Third, here's this theme again. People inside and outside of the church have expectations on how they should spend their time and how they should balance work and their family. I have heard from many women on many and also on many female leadership podcasts and books that women are asked all the time, how do you balance it all? Work, life, kids, marriage. And men typically are never asked that. Men do not often struggle with people telling them how they should balance work with raising their family. And so I feel like that is something that is very unique to us. And the fourth answer was they feel they always have to be the good girl and live according to cultural norms as the Christian girl. So all that being said, I also wanted to show you and find out for myself too how this all stacks up to the studies that are already out there, the facts about pay and how women leaders are accepted in congregations. So what I found in a study by Barna was that 79% of all people surveyed felt comfortable with a woman clergy person. 75% of men said yes, while 84 of women said yes. You can see the number is much lower for evangelicals, which makes perfect sense. But what was kind of surprising to me that 80% of Catholics said yes. In this same study, the state of the pastors, Barna found that the percentage of Protestant senior pastors who are women is only 9%. But that has tripled from 25 years ago. The study reported that the senior pastors are generally healthy and satisfied in ministry, and these women had a greater sense of being um, unprepared for the expectation of perfection and a higher sense that they must do everything correctly compared to male clergy. Now, when I researched the compensation information for all clergy, the source Data USA, which compiles information on jobs, industry skills, and education, showed this information. The average salary for a clergy person in America is $52,763. For men, it's $55,000, and for women, $41,000. That is quite a pay gap. In a survey to women, Barna asked, which of the following do you think are the three most important issues facing women today? 67% said fair pay, 56% said equal opportunity for promotion, and 41% said work-life balance. What a surprise. All of these were brought up in the survey responses that I received. Knowing all of that data and the information I received, I also wanted to find out from these women that if a genie was to grant them a wish for ministry, what would it be? So, very surprising to me, the top answer was for money and other physical resources, and not for themselves, but for their congregation or ministry context. And second, they wanted to make sure that the ministry work that they were doing was fruitful and makes a difference in their lives of the congregation and the community. Third, they just wanted more help to do the work of ministry, paid staff or volunteers. It didn't seem to matter. Just get us some help. Fourth, big surprise, more time and better work-life balance. They want to give the right amount of time to both, and they feel, like I said, this deep sense of guilt and wondering, like, am I spending the right time in the right places? Fifth, they would love to change people's minds and their attitudes and opinions in their churches, which wouldn't we all, right? Sixth, they dream of equality with male clergy, not just in pay, but in authority and respect and job opportunities. So, in conclusion, I feel like I just learned so much about women and their unique challenges in professional ministry. But here are my biggest takeaways that came up over and over again for me in those 296 responses I received. Number one, being a woman in ministry is different and it has unique challenges. Clergy women are hungry and in need of opportunities to share their experiences and have somebody else say, me too, me too. Number two, clergy women want to honor the women who have gone before us by further moving the needle in their equality and pay and authority in our work. They also want to inspire the next generation of female clergy who lead the church to continue moving the needle. And number three, work-life balance is a constant struggle for the majority of clergy women, and it's often misunderstood by congregations and the general public. And I think this quote again by the president of Fuller Seminary, by Alexis, sums up my and other clergywomen's great passion. She said, I've heard over my 25 years in this field that women want to be a part of the movement for change, even recognizing that they may not at this moment or in this decade serve in a way that they want to. They are playing a role contributing to that change, she says. And I have to tell you, I hear that with admiration because it really is quite a sacrifice. And yet you understand, because how would we have gotten to the place we are without women, without other people doing the same thing in the past? And so my hope and prayer with this work is that I encourage and equip clergy women now, and those are my daughters there in the middle. I want to continue to pave the way for my daughters and my beloved youth group girls and all the girls I see at camp and in the ministries that I'm a part of. I see the leadership skills in them and the gifts to be a pastor. As several clergy who filled out the surveys stated, our potential is really limitless when we are given a chance to lead and serve the people of God. The future is so bright for the next generation of clergy women. And so here are my resources that I used, and I thank you so much.
Thank you, Amber, and give you your first thank you and applause for sharing your project with us today. And as we go to our groups,